Talking to some of the best names in contemporary Christian music. This is the Hope FM Artist Interview.
I'm so pleased to welcome a fresh talent to the UK who've never been on European radio before. It's Mission House. That's Jess Ray and Taylor Leonhardt. Hey guys, how you doing?
We're doing great. Good to be here. Hey, Gordon.
Welcome to Hope FM. It's nice to have you with us. So I've got to say, we've played your music a little bit here on Hope FM, but you're not really very well known to people. And it would be lovely to correct that omission in our understanding. So would it be okay maybe if both of you shared a little bit of your life story, how you came to be working together on Mission House, but also where you came to encounter Jesus and your gift of music, how that all came about? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, first of all, thank you for playing us. And yeah, Mission House really has a pretty short history so far. So we are super excited to be, popping up in places we didn't expect and getting to meet new people and everything. So thank you. I'm Jess Ray. And so Taylor and I both have been doing music for quite a while separately. Then eventually we became really good friends back in 2015, started collaborating on different things, traveling a bit together. I grew up playing music with a lot of guys. So to have a friend that was a girl who was an incredible songwriter and just a blast to be around, we became friends very quickly and started collaborating a lot in music. And we both kind of share this similar thing of writing songs that maybe are informed by our faith and worldview, which is really both of our lives have been changed by Jesus. But sometimes, or more often, those songs maybe wander outside of what you might hear in church music or even sometimes on the radio. We would just kind of color more outside of the lines or be more artist, singer, songwritery. But both of us have this long history of leading worship for churches, however, not writing a ton of, for quite a while, not really writing worship songs. And then a couple of years ago, through kind of this gathering that was happening in what was then our hometown, Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm still there. Taylor's here in Nashville. And we started just meeting on Monday nights and worshiping with our friends. And before we knew it, we ended up writing songs just for that gathering. And then we're like, oh, these songs are actually, they're good. And we think they're good. And people keep remembering the songs or asking for them afterwards. So we kind of fell into writing worship music, which I feel like came easier because of the relationships we had built and a lot of the songwriting we had done prior to that, not for the church. It's been really fun to learn to write songs that are more congregational. So that's kind of how Mission House developed. So we're just a couple years in, and then obviously the pandemic happened in the middle of us really launching this new worship project. So we're excited because we're kind of starting to come out of that, or at least can hope for a future where we'll still be able to, we'll be able to gather all together and sing these songs together, because that's really what they're written for. They're written for people to get together and sing together. So we're excited about eventually getting to do that again. So
for sure. And what about you mentioned you've been worship leader for ages, but what about earlier on in life? Are you from a church going family and you would say you've been a Christian for as long as you can remember? Or is there a moment when you go, I remember at that point?
I would say that I do fall more on that. Like I made some sort of decision when I was a small child, because my grandparents' parents are all Christians, of course, like nominally, and then some that are more like devout. Like I have very vivid memories of coming out of my bedroom in the morning to see my mom on her knees praying regularly. So I would very much, and Taylor knows my mom, I would attest to any stability in my life or like knowing the Lord probably is from the prayers of my mother, and just her faithfulness. And so, yeah, I made a decision to follow, or began that, or kind of just grew up in that. But then, there's a time where it becomes necessary to grow roots of your own. And I would say that probably happened around middle school. And I had a couple of friends who, it's like funny because middle school is a great time. I mean, I had stupid friends too, bad influence kind of friends, but I actually had a couple of friends who were like serious about being Christians, in kind of this like cool, edgy way or something like that. And I fell in with that kind of crowd, actually. And we started making music. And so my relationship with God and writing songs has always kind of been on the same timeline and kind of intermingled my whole life. So, yeah.
Yeah. For me, my family grew up, or I grew up going to church with my family. It was just like, we have to do this. This is what we do every Sunday. Really, as a kid, like, I think I attach a lot of those Sunday morning memories with just like being forced to wear a dress and pantyhose. Ladies know what I'm talking about. And it's just like, so do
you remember bobby socks? The short socks with lace around them.
Yeah,
that's my memory.
Those are called bobby socks.
Yeah, bobby socks.
Just like
you've educated us. I didn't know that. I knew the socks you meant when you described them.
So that was sort of my memory. Is like, this is this place we have to go and kind of be restrained for a period of time, and and then we would always like the kids at church, like these kind of Sunday school kids that I would hang with. We would just play dodgeball while our parents were in the fellowship hall talking, and like someone would just end up with like a bloody nose, and so I don't like church didn't it that to say like it was kind of a social place for me as a kid. The message of the gospel had not yet, I felt like, reached my maybe it reached my ears, but definitely not my heart. And so, man, I was a high schooler. I was probably 14 or 15 before I really heard who Jesus was. And that was through a ministry that's really popular here in the States, but I know they're abroad too, called Young Life Ministry to high school students, and had like a college age leader who just came and hung out with me a ton, would pick me up from school, just spend a lot of time with me. And then meanwhile, we had these kind of weekly gatherings, and I heard about who Jesus was. And so had this great experience of like hearing about the gospel, hearing about this God become flesh to dwell with us. And then at the same time, getting befriended by a person who's kind of living that out for me. So that story really gripped my heart. Yeah, as a young teenager. And then right around the same time, I was learning guitar. We had just moved to a new town, and I didn't have any friends. Didn't have a lot of friends. And so my dad had a guitar from his college days, and he would pull it down every once in a while. And it occurred to me one day, because I'd always loved singing, that, I could learn guitar and learn how to accompany myself. And so he taught me like an Eagles song called Take It Easy. And then I just really picked it up from there. I learned a lot of Sarah McLachlan. I was a huge Sarah McLachlan fan in the early 2000s. And then I kind of realized that I could play, they asked me to play at Young Life, and I started going to a church, like a different church than my family. And I got in on the worship team. And, there was a woman on the worship team who really like kind of took me under her wing and gave me a lot of music to listen to. And so that was kind of my entrance into like, I didn't realize that these two things happen very separately, meeting Jesus and then also music becoming such an important part of my life. And they kind of dovetailed. And and then I think, like Jess said, that story of God becoming real in our lives, I think has worked its way into our music. And I don't know that either of us ever sat down and said, I'm going to write Christian music, but it just, as we were just telling the truth, that's kind of what happened.
You mentioned about someone giving you lots of music to listen to. Was it all Christian music? And if so, who were you listening to? Who's been your influences with regards to Christian music?
Yeah. Christian music for me started with, I don't know if you guys will know this. They had these, there was a group called Enter the Worship Circle, which was a group of a lot of different worship artists. And they basically put a microphone in the middle of the room and then just played their instruments and sang these songs. And the recordings are pretty raw, but these really heartfelt worship songs. And I think that was the first worship music I really heard as a kid, besides maybe things that, like, I don't know, just were on the radio. But that really definitely spoke to me, I think, because the emotions felt really true. And just the expression of it felt very honest. And that really appealed to me, because a lot of the stuff I was listening to really, I don't know, other Christian music, I think. Well, another CD she passed to me was Sandra McCracken, who we get to write music
Now
with
we're
and
friends
hang out
with
with
her,
now,
yeah.
which is really fun.
Totally.
And what about for you?
I definitely listened to more Christian music. I mean, my parents enjoyed lots of different stuff, but in the Christian category, I really did grow up like enjoying, like Jennifer Knapp would have been the earliest one for me, and then it would be Nicole Nordeman. Just people in the singer-songwriter artist category writing very deeply about, almost devotional about like their relationship with the Lord. So Nicole Nordeman, but then it's super funny because I was, this is gonna sound random, but I was perusing the page of the interviews you guys have done, and Skillet was like a massive influence on me for like this kind of Skillet. Punk phase, or what? It wasn't even punk, but I mean, I kind of had more of that attitude, but like in a Christian way, like we're like aliens and strangers to this world. So like Skillet has been around so long that it's fun to see, like they're massive now, but like people were diehard about them, like even before the albums I listened to. Like I probably came in on their third or fourth album, but then like my youth pastor, who's 5-10 years older than me, was like diehard Skillet fan with their like first or second album. So they've just had this massive long career. But yeah, they offered this, even though it was a very different style music than folk, some of the stuff I originally listened to, I think what I loved about it was this very raw, real, like relationship with Christ, understanding of the challenge of trying to live that out in the world. And so, yeah, I was just writing, Skillet on my shoes and my binder for school, and like was in this whole like combat boots and like really short hair and crazy necklaces kind of phase too. So yeah, Skillet. I mean, but stuff all over the place. But
two artists I think too that stand out to me would be like Switchfoot and what John Foreman was doing, and then Need to Breathe. Kind of two bands that I feel like sort of were telling like a gospel story, a Jesus story, but in language that like was pretty universal. And a lot of people, like Need to Breathe was huge when I was in college because they were from the area I was from. And I think like those even going to those concerts live and like thinking about, the way that John Foreman was writing and just musically what he was doing, I think it almost felt like, oh yeah, like there's no limit, like as a Christian musician, like they were inviting us to kind of imagine like there's no limit really to what we can do, like musically, and just getting creative.
And the theme with all these people, Skillet, Switchfoot, Need to Breathe, like and then us, we kind of, there's a lot about our artistry that kind of borders on, we'd like to just be great music to we'd like to be able to fit in mainstream just because we're simply making great music, but it's being informed by our worldview. And I think all of those bands have really kind of lived on that line most of their careers. So
How long have you been in Nashville now?
Well, I've lived here about a year and a half, and Jess still lives in North Carolina.
So when I talk to people sometimes in Nashville, I'm surprised with that because it often seems that people know other people and all the rest of it. Have you found it quite easy to get into the Nashville scene and meet lots of people, or have you found it a difficult community to break into?
Well, I think it's been honestly pretty easy. And, even though Jess doesn't live here, she very much has a community here too. And that is greatly in part thanks to our Integrity family. I mean, just the way that they've opened the door for friendship, like for us. And we've just met a lot of people at songwriting retreats, at Integrity retreats, that kind of thing, co-writes, and just found a lot of kindred-hearted people here in town. And also friends of ours, like, I don't know if you know Andrew Peterson. He's someone who's really I've been a mentor and a friend to both of us, and has lived here and established such a beautiful life and community here. So it's been a lot of people who honestly have been at this a lot longer than us and have lived here longer, and people that we have grown up listening to, or at least grown up admiring. And we're finding that those people are just kind of like looking over their shoulder, looking behind them, and kind of holding the door open for us. So Nashville is a fun place to be. It's not the only place to be, but we certainly do love making music here and love our friends here. So
that sounds cool. So great. Okay. Sometimes things don't always work out as we expect. and there's a little slot we do on the show called When Things Go Wrong, but God Puts Them Right. Have you got a story of something perhaps not going to plan, but God actually coming through?
I'm sure we both have that story. Can you think of, is there one coming to your mind?
Well, I think with the theme of like letting go, it's January of 2022, and I had plans to start a solo record for my artist stuff, and actually started making plans for that. But it was like conflicting with some other things. But I kept feeling like, okay, let's go ahead and start moving this direction. And then everything has been canceled because of COVID kind of spiking again. And it actually has all worked out really beautifully. So I know I have much bigger stories I've got to think about, but I'm like in a moment right now where I'm like, I had no way to anticipate that some of these other things were going to move off my calendar. And all of a sudden this kind of door opened up out of nowhere. And if I would have had it my way, I would have missed the way that it kind of has already all worked out in this month.
You've been watching The Artist Interview. For the full podcast, click the links below or visit hopefm.com/The Artist Interview.